All right, so how you doing, Jake? You doing good?
I'm doing well, man. Rob is on weight and we're ready to rock and roll.
All right. That's what I like to hear. So, one of the first questions I have for you is obviously you teach, you're a coach at Hard Knocks Muay Thai in Hyde Park, Massachusetts, and you're the striking coach for Rob Font, Kelvin Cater. They both have huge fights coming up. Obviously, Rob's is this weekend against one of the best guys in the division against Marlon Moraes. So, how have the camps been, getting both of them ready? I mean, obviously, Rob's got his fight coming up first, but how has the camp been going in and just setting up game plans and stuff like that?
It's going really well, man. So I handle the Muay Thai duties.
Yeah.
I share the striking coach duties with Sean Fowley.
Okay.
He's a boxing coach from Haverhill Inner City Boxing Club.
Okay.
I'm out on fight week with these guys, so in terms of like what we do towards the end, I'm lucky in that I get to do a majority of the work with Tyson. But throughout the camp, we develop a game plan. Tyson will put together a nice little PDF and he sends it out to all the coaches. Very astute. Right? That's why he's good at his job. And we kind of pick and choose the things, the strengths and the weaknesses of our opponent and then of our fighter themselves. We do a lot of tape review between Tyson, myself, and the other coaches. We really geek out on tape, and it's awesome. I think that allows a little more of a plan to flesh out. And I think that's one of Tyson's strengths is that he's just so thorough, and we all want to bounce off of that. So with this camp specifically, preparing for Marlon Moraes, I mean, there's a lot of footage on him because he's been fighting for so long. His tenure in the UFC, he's had a lot of early finishes, but he's also had a lot of longer fights that just haven't either he was able to win them or they just haven't gone his way. And we see a lot of the same things even back when he was fighting for World Series. Tyson actually put together a compilation of a certain thing Marlon does or doesn't do. And I mean, this footage is going back to like these little podunk MMA fights in Brazil in a ring. Like Tyson leaves no stone unturned, and it makes our job really pretty easy.
Right. I think with tape study, that's obviously, I mean, I have my own podcast. I'm not a coach or anything like that, but I like studying tape, to break down fights and give predictions and stuff like that. But do you think a lot of fighters and coaches don't study tape, and that's one of the detriments to a lot of high-level fighters? I mean, I feel like tape study is one of the most crucial things to do in terms of being a coach and a fighter.
So I think it's a little more important for the coaches to do the tape study than it is the fighters. Sometimes you get the fighters, they'll live inside their own heads if they see too much of the footage. Like even Rob and Calvin themselves, like they'll watch a piece here and there. Usually something we send them, but they will do the homework on their own. But they would much rather let Tyson and the coaches do all that stuff, and then we present the information to them, and we tell them the what, the when, the why, and the how. And that's good enough because that's the level of trust that's been established. It's not like that in all camps. Some fighters live and die. Like they go to bed. The last thing they do before they go to bed is watch their opponent's highlight reel, which, that can get dangerous because if you only ever see your opponent doing well, it can get into your head. But I do think it's really, especially now that information's so easily transferred and handled and sought out, like why not? Why not?
Right. So obviously, what do you think some of the keys are for Rob against Moraes tomorrow? I mean, I don't want, obviously, no game plans or anything like that, but what are some things that you see? I mean, obviously, I know you can't give away, like, specific game plans or anything, but what do you see in terms of the matchup?
So when we do these things, when we look at matchups and, prospective fights, and then we do game plans and stuff like that, it's just a giant math problem. Giant word problem, something like that, right? So let's Marlon is a powerful striker. He's on the shorter end, predominantly a quality kicker. He has that pretty deep Muay Thai background. So, what ranges do Muay Thai fighters operate at? What ranges do short Muay Thai fighters operate at? And then we back that up against, strike percentages and this, that, and the other thing landed. Now, how does that fit into Rob's strengths? You obviously do not stand in front of Marlon Moraes. Yeah, he's a buzzsaw. He's got heat in everything he throws. In the same token, there's diminishing returns later in the fight, and we've seen that. We've seen him get beat two different ways. We've seen someone stand in front of him and then Cejudo and just grind him to dust. I mean, Marlon threw everything he had. Aldo was the same way. And then you got a Sandhagen who was mobile and make Marlon miss. He kind of gets his heart broken early in the fight, and then Sene was just able to work his magic and put him away. So Marlon is not one single chink in his armor. He's human.
Mhm.
He loses at range. He can get beat by pressure. So it's up to us to instill confidence in Rob and the game plan to do so, and then it's up to Rob to perform.
Right, 100%. Obviously the main event of that card, it's probably the card of the year in terms of just from top to bottom. But the main event is two of the best strikers in the UFC. You've got Jeff Neal versus Wonderboy Stephen Thompson. How do you see that fight going in terms of striking and strategy and everything on the feet?
Oh my goodness, what a good matchup, huh?
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that Stephen Thompson is the better striker.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff Neal is a striker that has a lot of power, but overall, I think Stephen Thompson is the more fleshed out, bigger toolbox. He has kind of a risky style in the hands down karate stuff, but it's who gets to go first.
Mm-hmm.
If Stephen Thompson is able to make Jeff Neal miss early, I think he's fine.
Mm-hmm.
I think Jeff Neal has 2.5 rounds to win this fight. Otherwise, Thompson's coasting, and then he might be able to catch him with something short, like he did with Luke Hay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also a Wonder Boy fanboy, so not a tough ask here.
Right.
Great fight though. Really excited for that one.
Right. Another big fight on the card is Jose Aldo coming back against Marlon Vera. How do you see that fight going? I mean, I think that's another great fight on the card aside from Rob's fight with Moraes. I mean, like we said, it's one of the cards of the year. It's stacked from top to bottom.
Oh, absolutely. We had our eyes in this fight. I think Aldo, you know what? Walking around on grounds this week, Aldo looks great.
Mm-hmm.
Physically, he looks awesome with this 35 cut. He looks better than he did in his last one. I think Aldo won his fight against Moraes. He's the best bantamweight that doesn't have a bantamweight W.
Okay.
Cheeto tends to take the first round off.
Mm-hmm.
I think Aldo's power is going to set him apart. I think if he's able to lay into Cheeto, I think Cheeto's going to, his eyes are going to open pretty wide, and he's going to have to pull something off. I think Cheeto takes it to the ground, and I think that determines, how is Aldo going to do in terms of his gas tank, if he has to scramble, so on and so forth. But Aldo has a striking advantage. He's going to have the power advantage. He's going to have the speed advantage. Not overlooking Cheeto at all. This is a huge ask of Cheeto.
Mm-hmm.
If Cheeto does it, I think it's towards the end of the second or the third by submission. If Aldo does it, it's within the first two by KO or TKO. But again, another sick fight.
Do you think that Marlon can finish Aldo on the feet if it goes longer, like towards the end of the second into the third, or do you think he has to get it to the ground?
Nah, Cheeto has to get it to the ground. I don't know. Now I feel like I'm gonna curse the damn fight. I believe only because of how solid Aldo looked the entire Moraes fight at 35.
Mm-hmm.
His power is carrying over really, really, and he didn't lose a lick of speed either.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't look great, obviously, against Peter, but not many people do.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
I think Cheeto gets the win by something on the ground.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, I have Cheeto winning that fight too, so I'm excited for that one. It's like we said, an amazing card. We'll talk a little bit about obviously your experience as a striking coach. You have over 20 professional fights and everything like that in professional Muay Thai and stuff like that. What is the most crucial aspect of technique or like teaching and fine tuning some pro fighters that you get to work with? What do you think is the most crucial thing that they have to pick up on when you have to teach a pro fighter?
So I have over 20 combined fights.
20 combined fights.
Career.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I had a much longer amateur career, and I had I'm pretty proud of my amateur career. What Muay Thai was back then, you fight at a higher level earlier in your career than later, because professionally speaking, 10, 15 years ago, there weren't too many fights to really push you through to the top, and there still isn't. But I fought a lot of really good guys as amateurs.
All right, so we'll go back to another question I got, and that is, we'll start obviously because some of this got cut off. But what do you think is the most crucial aspect of teaching and fine tuning the technical striking for guys at the pro level?
So you have to take a look at the skills, strengths versus weaknesses, and then the respective weight class, the sport, and then the ever shifting landscape, especially in terms of striking. Like we spoke about, the prevalence of calf kicks now, it's going to severely alter the way traditional boxers or heavy boxing MMA style fighters, boxing style MMA fighters fight. You can't. Calf kicks is such a weapon that you can't ignore them.
Right.
That's you're not going to punch. It's not like a leg kick. You're not going to punch your way through a leg kick.
Right.
And then from there, you get the stance changing and the lateral movement, the ins and outs and stuff like that. So when I get to work with these pros, I have to do my homework, because a lot of the guys I'm being brought into like midway through their career, all my homegrown killers, they're all Muay Thai fighters. I've been brought into these guys' camp in the latter portion of their career, and I'm very thankful that I got to skip the line, but I also am very aware that I got to skip the line.
Yeah.
So I need to go back and do my homework. I need to watch these guys' wins as much as I watch the losses. I need to watch their interviews. I YouTubed all of these guys, even Tyson, before we started working together. I needed to know where these guys were mentally, and then with the guys, if there's pad work online, even their strength and conditioning sessions online, you gotta look at them. You can't ignore the ever-changing landscape of their sport. It's on like a 5-year cycle at this point.
Yeah, exactly. We talked a little bit about it earlier, the footwork and then the movement and changing stances. How important is rhythm and manipulation of that rhythm in terms of striking at the highest level?
Core value. It's the core value. You got that understanding of it. You don't necessarily have to be the most rhythmic fighter to win, but you need to know what it looks like when you get into the ring or the cage with somebody who's slick, who's got years and years of this training, or the traditional boxer, the rhythm of Muay Thai. Even you see the capoeira influence fighters, they have a different rhythm, and you have to detect little bits and pieces of it. And if you don't have rhythm yourself, that's fine. If you have an understanding of how to detect it and then break it up or interrupt it, it usually does you a big favor. It's the guys who ignore the rhythm. They get caught with the traps, the setups, and stuff like that. I mean, it's the bar now. You have to have it, or you have to know what it looks like.
Right. 100%. Well, basically talking about rhythm and stuff like that. And we mentioned it a little bit earlier, flowing from stance to stance. And you said earlier, it's kind of like the bar now. Everybody changes from southpaw to orthodox, or orthodox to southpaw. How important is that in terms of trying to set up your power shots? Is it better to have power? Obviously, it's better to have power in both hands, but everybody always has like one dominant hand, which is usually in their back foot. But how important is that stance switch for setting up your power?
So the way we look at it, especially if you watch Calvin and Rob's body work, is it's not. Yeah, yes, you want to set up the power hand, yes, but you also need to be able to have an open toolkit, because the finish comes when you set it up, or you no longer look for it, right? So I can offer you X amount of things. If I stand in orthodox, you're orthodox. Yeah, I have my different levels I can strike you on: calf, leg, floating rib, chest, so on and so forth, right? Now what happens if I have all those 5, 6, 7, 8 targets, and then you have to worry about them when I change things. That's 16 targets now. That, I believe, that increases the percentage of the chance that I'm going to land that power shot. I'm going to hide it a little better.
Okay.
You don't have to have a weapon at every level. You should have an understanding of it. But for guys that have, especially these 4-ounce gloves, you can't go whipping shots at the side of people's heads. You break your hand. You see it all the time. It's just so dangerous to not place your shots with these small gloves. So why not soften up the body? Why not force them into your power? Set these traps, so on and so forth. I mean, you can hurt a guy without touching him.
Yeah.
You get him freeze, unfreeze, freeze, unfreeze. All of a sudden, then you get hit with nothing but they're half gassed out. What the hell's going on here? You have to reverse engineer the problem, especially if you got somebody who goes into a fight injured. I think being able to cut off the cage too. I mean, you can only do so much cutting off the cage in your stance. Especially if they become a runner, they're able to go L step, neutral step, so on and so forth.
Right.
And everyone's got their own little tricks in the bag and stuff like that. But I think in terms of efficiency, whether it's defensively or offensively, setting up the finish, making it work a little easier for yourself, and not chasing someone around all day, you have to have the ability to step in your stance now.
Right. 100%. You'll see a lot of guys, they'll disguise it with the jab, like they'll jab and then they'll step into the opposite stance. Or they'll throw the power hand out like a jab to disguise the step. Poirier does it really well. That guy who was fighting this weekend, but the fight got pulled, Dolce Lugiambola, I think his name is.
Yeah,
he does that a little bit. I think he did that against Ankleev. Footwork is probably the most important thing. Footwork and rhythm. If you can't have your footwork and your rhythm, then you're going to get picked apart at the highest level. And one of the guys you mentioned earlier was Willie Pep, and how he would always switch stances. And didn't he use like a shifting jab or like a switch stance jab? I don't know. I haven't seen a lot of his stuff, but I've seen a little bit.
So the pep step, he would kind of like make a V.
Okay.
He would put his feet together.
Okay.
He would put his feet together, and he'd also roll under punches backwards. Like he would stick his ass out. He would go shoulder first. He would go butt first.
Okay.
And he would kind of do the matador with that, and it worked. I don't know how it would probably. You see Lomachenko do it. He's gotten bit a few times for doing it, but I mean back then, the V step, the pep step, whatever you want to call it. I mean, you get away with murder back then.
Yeah.
The overall skill level of boxing isn't what it is today. And Pep was just so ahead of his time that he was able to get away with it. To me, it's mind-boggling that he had that know how to do. Because you look at like Dempsey, right? The Dempsey roll, figure eight. Realistically, if you look at that, he's just whipping overhands as he's stepping through his stance.
Yeah.
And it's ugly, but good God, does it work? Because that man hits like a Mack truck.
Right.
But it's not. I mean, it's not aesthetically pleasing. It can go wrong. It's very energy inefficient, even though he believed it was energy efficient. But yeah, the landscape of the boxing world has changed many times since Pep was fighting.
Yeah, one of the best, or one of the guys who I know people have compared to Willie Pep is Dominic Cruz. He was one of the first guys, the first guys to ever like really implement footwork into MMA. I mean, nobody could touch that guy until I know a lot of people think TJ beat Dominic Cruz. I in no way, shape, or form think that he did anything in close to beating him. He did good. I mean, I don't know. Like I love TJ. Yeah, I love TJ and Dominic, but I just think Dominic kind of showed him, like, they have different styles, but I don't know. That's one of my favorite fights to watch. But obviously Cody Garbrandt was like one of the first guys, or the first guy to ever like dominate Dominic Cruz.
Oh yeah, he set the standard. He absolutely set the standard in terms of beating Dominic Cruz. I could not believe how that fight went, to be honest with you.
Me neither. It was insane. But he's making his comeback. He's coming back against Casey Kenny at I think they said
that's an interesting fight.
259. Right? What do you think on that fight? How do you think Dom's gonna look? Do you think he's gonna change things up with his style or what?
No, I don't think Dom will ever change. He might make small adjustments to. I mean, Dom's style is Dom's style. He's been doing it for so long, and he has the injuries to prove it. It's a very rough way to make your career in terms of like knee and ankle health.
Yeah.
But he's who he is, and it got him there for so long. If he's going to change, the changes are minor. Maybe he does things at a different, like we're talking about rhythm or tempo. Maybe he changes one of his styles. Because guys like that, there's so much footage for you to download. There's so many opportunities to see what his styles are. And Casey's no joke. Casey, you cannot sleep on that.
No. Yeah, he's very good.
I'm really, really excited to see that fight, though. I think I'm going to say Casey wins that fight. I would love to see Casey win that fight, too.
Oh, you think Casey beats Dominic?
I do, yeah.
Why do you think that? What do you think is like the key? You think it's his power kicks, like the switch kicks and stuff like that, or what?
So, yeah, I think he's going to be able to corral Dom a little better. Casey's a pretty good representative of how smaller guys have adopted the new striking style in the sport. Like he's got better and more kicks than I mean Cejudo. Cejudo was able to kick Dominic to pieces.
Right.
It's not taking anything from Cejudo, but I think Casey's inherently a better kicker. And I think Dom's just. He's Dom, but he's just like a little slower version of Dominic Cruz. I don't want to say he's on a decline, but he's not. Casey's he's on a rocket ship right now.
Yeah, that fight with
Dom's slowly sliding down.
That fight with Nathaniel Wood was insane. I picked Nathaniel Wood to beat him, but I honestly thought I don't know if I think I thought that Nathaniel Wood beat him, but he got taken down in like the third round, and that sealed it for Casey Kenny. But do you think that Cruz will ever be able to get to the top of that division again? I mean, Casey Kenny's not an easy fight, like you said, but do you think he'll ever get to the top again?
No. If Dom does anything, he bumps his head on the top Is he ranked right now? Where is he?
He's not. I don't think he's ranked.
Did they bump him from an inactivity?
Yeah.
I don't think he breaks through the top 5. Mm-hmm. If he does make it up, I don't think I think he bumps his head against that ceiling. It's nothing against him. It's just time. It's time and the way the game has changed. And he didn't look to me any better in his last fight. He just didn't look any different. It was, here's the Dominic Cruz we've all seen. There's been no reinvention of his abilities, or he's just him. And I think it's just guys are moving past that right now. And I think it's there's just too much information on Dom. I hate to say that's like a detriment at this point, but like there's too much information. There's too much studying people can do to corral a fighter like Dom, especially because he really hasn't changed too. Like you might get a Dom that wrestles more. Yeah, he may choose to wrestle more in that fight, which I would like to see. I would actually like to see a much more wrestly Dominic Cruz. But again, knees and ankles, man. Yeah, I can only imagine how hard it is to wrestle with somebody like Kenny on a bad knee or a bad ankle.
Yeah, it's not good, but I hope I would like to see Dominic get to the top again. But like you said, once that new wave comes in and it kind of cancels out the old wave of the top guys in that division, they can't really ever get past it. It's just like a changing of the guard. So we talked about stance switching and everything like that. You said that before, that you think like the calf kick was one of the biggest like new weapons that came into MMA, and it just took it over. I mean, we saw it with Benson Henderson did it a little bit. We saw it with he was like one of the first guys to do it. I think I talked with Tyson about that in the interview I did with him. But Cheeto Vera, that was the main thing that he used against Sean O'Malley. And I'm not gonna lie, it pissed me off the amount of people that said that Sean O'Malley didn't get hurt by Cheeto, because like you could clearly see that once he landed those calf kicks, like his foot was dead. It was like the Mighty Mouse and Cejudo fight.
Yeah, yes. You know what the argument is that's killing me, and I think we're talking about the same thing here, is that, and it'll, flat out, it'll just be verbatim. Sean O'Malley doesn't lose that fight uninjured or something like that. It was like, no. He got injured, and he got injured because the guy who was trying to injure him.
Exactly.
Like, are you kidding me? The calf kick was not, he didn't trip and fall on his own.
No.
He got kicked, busted his nerve up, and he rolled his foot. The, what do they call it? The floating foot lifting?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, whatever that term is. But poor Cheeto, just not getting the respect he deserves of beating the brakes off that kid. And then, forget about what happened at the very end when he knocked him out and then woke him back up with another elbow.
Yeah.
and then what was O'Malley's first thing once he got back to cut? Just roll over and grab his leg.
Yep.
Like, yeah, we know what the goal is. Yeah, we understand. And then the I'm undefeated 13-0 thing. Man, I hate to talk shit. I really don't like talking shit, Matt, but that was a frustrating situation.
I know. I don't want to talk shit on any fighters because I'm not a pro fighter, so I can't sit here and talk shit about anybody. But what do you think is the next? What do you think is the next big strike to like make a difference in MMA? What's the next technique that maybe we don't see too much right now? Maybe it's an adjustment of a technique we already see. What do you think is going to be the next thing to make waves in the striking game of MMA?
I think knees and elbows against the cage. I think there's going to be the pummeling's going to change a little bit. I think the anti-wrestling is going to change a little bit. I think there's going to be a swing towards those closer range weapons. We're seeing, with the inclusion of like the City Kickboxing team and Tiger Muay Thai and stuff like that, you're getting a lot more Muay Thai influenced larger gyms that they're putting out more fighters. So there's a higher percentage of seeing these techniques, and that's going to help them catch fire a little quicker. I mean, there are a lot of guys, like you look at like a Matt Brown. His clinch is awesome.
Yeah,
his Muay Thai sentiment in the clinch is really, really awesome. John Jones, he's got a good elbow IQ. I think Calvin and Rod have really good sticky hands, pummeling, weaving, stuff like that, but they're also really good. They're getting better, and they are really good wrestlers.
Right.
You guys just haven't seen too much of that lately.
Yeah.
You want the elbow stuff to happen at range. I think MMA fighters are a little too mobile.
Okay.
But I think against the cage is where you're going to see that more. Like Calvin knocked out Jeremy, right? The skip into the rear elbow.
Yep.
He was kind of. You watch the slow mo. His right hand is reaching to pull
down,
clear the guard and rip the elbow over, and that's that's elbow 101 right there.
Right.
But in terms of like pummeling and sneaking elbows in, Wiley's really good at that too. She comes from Muay Thai background.
Yeah.
Joanna's good at it. The Shevchenko sister's really good at it. I think we'll see it more though. I think that's the next shift in 5 years or so.
Okay.
People aren't really solving the problem with calf kicks though, so I don't know if they're going to go away.
No.
I have a lot of people checking them still. They're a little better than they used to be.
Yeah.
But I think they're here to stay for a bit.
You can't really, now I don't know 100%, but you can't really check a calf kick, right? Because it comes so low on the leg that it's harder to check it. You're not going to check it off the knee or anything like that.
No, you can. You definitely can. And going back to our conversation about rhythm,
right?
Sometimes the solution isn't necessarily checking. Sometimes it's just evasion. And eventually people will lose faith, and when they feel how exhausting it is throwing your entire leg and it misses, and then you kind of go in a quarter circle or a half circle, and you got to pull yourself around, or you got hit on the way back. I mean, people will just say, "Nah, forget that. I'm not throwing it anymore." But it really only takes 1 or 2 checks. I thought Calvin broke Lamas' foot when he checked one of his calf kicks. Right before he finished them. The knee check. There's a few guys who will do that. And Calvin actually checked a few of Jeremy's kicks. I know, contrary to what Rogan or whoever the hell was doing the casting was saying.
Yeah.
Calvin had checked a bunch of those kicks. You look at Jeremy's shin afterwards. His shin had lumps all over it.
Right.
And I'm saying, Calvin's leg was fine the next day too. It wasn't compromised. There wasn't limping. You can check the calf kick. You have to be aware, and you have to look at your stance. Again, rhythm and tempo, man. You can make it work.
Okay. How, obviously we talked a little bit about Wonder Boy and Jeff Neal, and Wonder Boy primarily fights out of that side stance and the karate in and out movement from the side stance. Do you think really the key to shutting that stance down is just the low kicks and the front stomps to the knee?
Luque tried. Luque had a little bit of success with it. And I think what happened was Wonder Boy adapted a little faster than Luque could hide his attacks. He was throwing a lot of naked calf kicks once he started getting hurt. Mm-hmm. And you got to factor that in too, like especially people who don't fight or people who have only had a few fights. Like even if a weapon is working, if the 5th time you throw that weapon and they check it, or the 5th time you throw that and you get caught with a punch because they're ready for it, you lose a little bit of faith in it. Maybe you get dazed a little bit and kind of that you haven't the ability to see that range of equilibrium a little off. Yeah. So you just start throwing them. You start Hail Marying them, and you're actually not as close as you were at the beginning of the fight throwing them. You do beat a karate style fighter like that. I think there's better ways to beat them, especially because we saw it with when Woodley cracked them. Right. They're just they go in so hard, and there's a huge payoff, right? Like how he tagged Luque and dropped him. Right. There's a huge payoff. That speed just pays dividends, but on the other end, you are driving your face towards their fist just as fast as they're throwing their fist towards your face. Yeah. So it's with those guys, I think, yes, that is part of the play, but I also think it's getting them to overcommit. Tyson and I actually had this discussion. We watched the Wonder Boy and Luque fight 2 nights ago, and we were talking about how to beat something like that. And we had differing opinions, but the fact remains that it's less about got to hit him with this, you got to hit him with that, and it's more setting things up, and it's kind of funneling them into what you need to do versus just nope, calf kicks. I'm gonna go out with calf kicks. Yeah, yeah. Until you get your foot broken. That's a false expectation. So you like Wonder Boy hasn't trained to get kicked in the calf before. Yeah, yeah. Come on now. Dude, what was he, like 100-0 or 49-0 in kickboxing or something? I think so. Yeah, like 56-0 or something like that. I don't know. It was something incredible. Yeah. So going off what you just said, it's about fakes and feints too, right? You got to get them to overcommit, and then you can start attacking with the low kicks and the stomps to the knee. You have to get. I feel like with Wonder Boy, he hasn't really fought guys who use fakes and feints like he does, and I think that Jeff Neal's like one of the first guys he's gonna fight, aside from Woodley, because Woodley tried to use like the fake jab or to overcommit on the right hand, but. Do you think that Jeff Neal's one of the first guys he's fighting who really like relies on the fakes and the feints and the footwork? Yeah, I think Jeff Neal's probably got the higher IQ in terms of strikers he's fought against. Jeff Neal obviously has some silly power. Some crazy power, right? I think he falls in love with the power sometimes, but he does have like a really high IQ. It's really fun to watch. But I still think Wonder Boy is he's too fast for everyone. He's too fast. He's just got to make good choices consecutively. And again, I'll harken back to the Luque fight, probably because it's the most recent one that I watched. His behavior towards the end of the fight, the way he came off the stool ready for that the last round was odd. His adjustments were great. He was doing similar things that he had done the rounds previous, but he had changed up the delivery and he changed up the timing and when he did them. He was doing them in different spots in the cage too. That's another thing people don't look at.
Yeah.
Some of your weapons just don't work when you're on the warning track.
Right.
Or the risk reward ratio has changed entirely.
Yeah.
And it's up to Jeff Neal to predict that stuff and kind of correct. I'm really excited to see what his game plan is going to be. I'm a big fan of both those guys.
Me too.
But like I said, Wonder Boy fanboy over here.
Yeah, I'm really, really looking forward to that fight. And we said earlier that card is just stacked from top to bottom. We know about Rob's fight. We talked about that earlier. If he wins this, he's right there for a title shot. Depending on what happens with, I think they just announced Sandhagen and Edgar are fighting in February, right? I saw that.
Yeah. I you know what I thought that was gonna. I honestly thought Frankie was gonna get the winner of Aldo Cheeto, and I thought Sandhagen was gonna kind of skip the line. But yeah, man, that's a tough fight.
Yeah, it's
a tough fight for Frankie.
I think Frankie looked pretty good against Pedro, but I didn't think I thought the fight was really close, but against a guy like Corey, I don't know. I think Corey's on a different level than Frankie in terms of the movement, but Frankie's really quick. So, who knows?
You know what? It's if Frankie decides to wrestle. If he's going to wrestle in this fight, I think it's a completely different fight.
Yeah.
If he's going to strike, it is going to be a nightmare. Sandhagen's going to do his thing, and I'm really excited. I don't ever want to see Frankie get hurt. Fucking, he's everyone loves Frankie, right?
Yeah.
I love seeing Sandhagen do his thing. It's really, really cool. That kid's on a different planet, man. Shout out to his Muay Thai coach too, Sean Madden. He's an OG of the American Muay Thai scene. He's a stud. Did a great job with him.
Yeah. We'll go back to another question I had for you that we talked about a little bit earlier. And it's who is a fighter in the UFC or kickboxing or Muay Thai that you would really like to get the chance to work with?
Yeah, and out of all, if you give me free reign of everybody in the world, right? All disciplines. Wiley, Rose, Valentina. They're their own three style of fighters, and they all got something different. They're also entertaining to watch. I would love to download their brains for a little bit and see what goes on there. Being able to, or watching the evolution of what Muay Thai and kickboxing is doing with the smaller 4-ounce gloves now, in one, and Muay Thai Super Champ, Cage Muay Thai in Australia, CMT, John Wayne Paz joint there. It's really cool to see how fighters are changing their styles and then looking at how it applies possibly to MMA striking. And I want to get with those guys as coaches. I want to get with their teammates. There's just so much information now. And it's all being thrown into a blender and mixed up again. It's really refreshing. The last 3-4 years, it was super refreshing for striking.
Right. 100%. We talked a little bit about Wei Lee and Rose if they get that fight. We won't spend too much time on that again, but I'm really looking forward to that. I think it definitely happens next. There's no one else for Wei Lee to fight, so I don't see any reason you would give her anybody else. One other question I had for you, and it goes more off, you said you're really into the defensive type of coaching, like teaching fighters how to be slick and defensive to set up your offense and vice versa. They're one of the best things we see in boxing, which it doesn't really work too well in MMA, is the shoulder roll defense, the Mayweather style of shoulder rolling. What do you think? How do you think a fighter can implement that shoulder roll into MMA? Is there a certain way they can implement that into their game, or is it just because of that side stance, you're going to get chopped to bits with the low kicks?
Yeah, you look at someone like Ortega and Poirier. Poirier is probably the best at it.
Right.
There are a couple other guys that have it, but it's not. If you're fighting someone who's predominantly a boxer and maybe just doesn't see low kicks, or maybe that low kick they throw isn't too good, you could probably make it entertaining. It's just with all boxing defenses, these 4-ounce gloves, man, the whole thing changes. You can't afford to get hit in the side of the head.
Yeah.
You can't have somebody punch you in the wrist because that punch is going to go right through that.
Right.
To be completely honest, I'm not a huge fan of it. I like seeing it work if it does work, but right now we're studying tape on Holloway when he's fought both Ortega and Poirier, and it's just not. I don't think it's super viable. If you've been doing it for your life and it's something you have ingrained, it's probably, I don't think it's something you're going to learn and implement effectively in the last, 5-10 years of your career, especially with the skill level and the general boxing acumen in MMA right now at the highest level.
Yeah.
No. I'm not a huge fan of it.
100%, man. I completely understand that. And we'll go a little bit off Poirier. And this will probably be one of the last questions. But we've got Poirier and McGregor on the 23rd. Rematch. It's about 6 years since their first fight. How do you see that fight going? Like, what do you think is going to be the key for that fight?
So, at the very beginning when it was announced, I was really excited for Poirier to be able to run it back because he's so much better than he was then. And, he's hydrated at 55 now. So is McGregor. But even the argument can be made that Poirier's been busier and that McGregor has not.
Yeah.
The other argument can be made that Poirier has been in more wars, has taken more damage than McGregor.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to get my balls busted for saying this, but I'm like 50-50 down the middle. I usually root against Conor.
Yeah.
I mean, I like him as a fighter for sure. I think he's so entertaining, he's so innovative, but I love Dustin Poirier as a person and as a fighter. He's so, I think so. There are bits and pieces of Poirier's game that are starting to creep through right now, in that he's relying less on his solo boxing, just boxing, and he's weaving in step throughs, and his leg kick is a lot better now. And McGregor's a southpaw as well, so we're going to see. I think we're going to see a more diverse toolbox from Poirier, but I think McGregor is just. He's just so powerful, so fast. This is going to be at 55, yeah?
Yeah, 55.
Yeah, so, he's an absolute sledgehammer at 55. I do, my heart of hearts, want Poirier to win, but I think it is a 50-50 shot.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, I think it's a lot closer than the first time, but I feel like Conor's so clean with his striking, and so is Dustin, but I think it's just different levels. Like, Poirier's really clean with his combinations, but I think that Conor's definitely more accurate, and I feel like the accuracy of that left hand is just going to creep through. But I'm really excited. I think of anybody Conor's fought, this is the guy who has the most potential to knock him out.
Agreed, 100%. Yeah, strong agree right there. That and Khabib's right hand. Take out Khabib's right hand out of the picture.
Yeah. All right. I think I wrapped up about just about everything in terms of my questions and stuff. I had a really fun time interviewing you. I think this is probably one of the best interviews I've done. So thank you.
Thank you, man.
Thank you.
This was fun. This was really fun. I really appreciate it. You're only second interview.
Yeah, well, we'll definitely get you back on, because I had a lot of fun with this conversation. So if you want to come back on, I'll get you on anytime.
I'd love to, Mark. I really appreciate the opportunity, man.
Thank you. And good luck to Rob in his fight this weekend. Good luck to Kelvin against Max. I think you guys are gonna shock the world this weekend and then in January.
Thank you, my friend. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good one, okay?
You as well.